Chapter 26, Moon Mines. The slightly bulging equatorial region of our globe is closer to the moon than other parts of the Earth. Probably for this reason, women who live near the equator tend to ovulate during the full moon. Because of the phenomenon of menstrual synchrony, in which women living together tend to have their periods at the same time, a synchronous full moon ovulation would mean a synchronous menstruation near the dark of the moon. And mythology has in fact associated the two. Women living together in small hunter-gathering bands in the equatorial regions would have had their bleeding times together at the same time of the month, when the moon was dark and the earth devoid of her light. Our human ancestors lived for millions of years in equatorial Africa, and perhaps this means that the human consciousness began evolving in synchrony with the powerful, observed fact that all females bleeding together, bleeding mysteriously, in a time with the mysterious disappearance of the moon. Among early women, no one experienced menstruation in private. It was not a personal phenomenon, but an awesome datum of the female group. Group initiation rites were held when the young girls reached puberty. This is still true among all Aboriginal people worldwide, whose consciousness has been totally suppressed by Christian patriarchy. Originally, female puberty rites of first menstruation were not meant to punish girls with shame for the crime of becoming women, or to restrict their new lives as women in a punitive way. The rites were a celebration of female power and an initiation of the young girl into the wise, careful use of that power for the benefit of all. The first menstruation was a transition into partaking of the nature of the cosmic mother and her full face, the moon. Women's monthly cycle being seen as of the same duration as the moon cycle, and women's bleeding synchronous, actually or legendarily, with the dark moon. It was easy to believe that the moon mother was bleeding also. The witches' sabbats were originally observances of the sacred or taboo days of the new and full moon, critical days of her cycle, days and nights of great power for good or for harm. Women originally went into menstrual huts in order to gather the dark moon power, to focus it and study it in solitude. In both group and solitary meditation, moon power became mind power. There is a common root word for moon and menstruation. Our own word for menstruation comes from menses, the Latin word for month, which was measured originally by the moon. And both words are related through Indo-European roots to the Old English word mona, moon, deriving from me, which meant both mind and measurement. All are cognates: moon, mind, measurement, month, menstruation, since it is the moon mind that establishes measurement, including calendars. This cluster of meanings can also be found in the Egyptian moon god, who was worshipped as the creator of the alphabet, the art of writing, literature, numbers, counting, and wisdom. Through the Egyptian moon god was male, he was seen as the lover of the goddess and thus assigned her attributes. Menstruation also means moon change, also mind change. The mother was seen to rest at full moon when she was neither waxing nor waning. Sabbat means heart rest. The witches' sabbats were first held once a month, but later at each quarter of the moon. All witches' celebrations, all pagan rituals were acts of cognizing a revolving process, change within continuity, continuity within change, around and around forever. Pregnancy, as well as menstruation, was believed to be caused by the moon. Menstruation came from the new moon or dark moon, while the full moon impregnated a folk belief that correlates very well with the fact of equatorial ovulation during the full moon. Many mythological and folk heroes and religious founders were supposedly conceived by the moon, including the Buddha and Jesus, when we think about it, whose mother still stands on her moon. Physically, the moon exerts a gravitational pull which, combined with that of the sun, deforms the Earth's surface by as much as a foot. The surface of the ocean is pulled into a bulge measuring several feet, causing the tides. Recent studies have shown, however, that it is the light of the moon, perhaps even more than its gravitational pull, that influences reproductive behavior in organisms. Like most animals and plants, humans evolved in a light and dark world, day and night, alternating regularly. But periodically, the night is not dark around the time of the full moon. Perhaps the human species evolved a genetic response to moonlight if all early women ovulated at the full moon. Light is a potent trigger of biological rhythms, and it is not an impossibility that artificial light has affected our body rhythms. There is never real darkness in a city, destroying our ancient understanding of our menstrual month moon periodicity, perhaps destroying also our knowledge of natural contraception, as suggested provocatively by Louise in her book, Lunaception. The power of fertility in plants, as well as in humans, was seen to emanate from the moon. Many people still hold the ancient belief that plants grow mostly at night under the polarized moonlight. Agriculture began in very warm Near Eastern climates where the sun can be a force hostile to life, scorching young shoots, burning leaves, and the soil into arid dust. Plutarch, in his Isis and Osiris, argued that the moon, with her humid and generative light, is favorable to the propagation of animals and the growth of plants, while the sun, with his fierce fire, scorches and burns up all growing things, renders a great part of the earth uninhabitable by reason of his blaze, and often overpowers the moon herself. In such lands, summer with its unrelenting heat was conceived as a return to chaos, the end of the world through heat and fire. Early people saw the sun as the lesser fruit of the mother sky. It was female night with her cool moisture and magical moonlight that gave life and fertility. In the cold north, though, where the sun is benevolent and welcome, the sun was seen as mother goddess. Perhaps this was so also for the Celts. Ancient people knew that a child is not only the product of human sex. Children are also the offspring of the earth spirit, joined with the astrological influences existing at its conception and birth. Earth was considered to be the home of children before they were born. In Africa and Australia, for example, souls waiting to be born were believed to live under the earth or in rocks. Unborn children lived in fountains, springs, lakes, and streams, or in trees, bushes, and flowers, waiting to be born as human beings through the joined energies of the earth and moon. Festivals dedicated to the goddess were the favorite times to conceive children. The moon's monthly waxing was beneficial to an infant's growth, and there were baptism rites where the baby was exposed to the moon, sun, and earth, incorporating the newborn within the celestial sphere or family. In this way, both Bantu Africans and Native Americans linked the social, biological, and spiritual worlds. Among people for whom sex does not imply impurity or hold magio co-religious danger, the taboo of the sexual act does not occur in relation to ceremonies. Rather, ceremonial sex was always a powerful act leading to spiritual perfection. Within the stone circles of the Neolithic, perhaps the entire human community celebrated the creative power of the goddess in festivals coinciding with those magical times when the earth tides of the unseen flowed strongly around through the earth. Earth channels were then wide open to receive her power, giving enhanced consciousness, healing, and fertility to the people. These are the ceremonies that have been so condescendingly labeled fertility rites by prurient patriarchal anthropologists and satanic orgies by the missionaries. And what were those children like who were born with the blessings of both the moon mother, and their human mothers? Were their psyches wide open, communicating easily with the greater self? Was the psychic astral lunar body more vibrant and aware? Were they able to communicate and resonate with the animals and plants, with stones and the whole earth, and also turn into cosmic vibrations of moon, sun, and stars? What were moon minds like? The vast silence of dark space lit by the clarity of the moon and the stars became a metaphor for deep thought and creative vision. The moon goddess was the judge and giver of law. Crimes, challenges, problems were investigated by the women by moonlight. Nights were spent sitting around the fire, thinking, contemplating, and visioning. This is why words have to do with mental activity are, in most languages, cognate with names for the moon. Men's mental measure, month, mind. They call the moon the mother of the universe, having both female and male power herself alone. Sowing and reaping were reckoned by the moon, sowing at the new moon and reaping at the old. All agricultural proceedings had to be timed with the moon's changes. Planting, cultivating, and harvesting were originally women's work, since only women are under the direct guardianship of the Moon Mother. Many agricultural people still believe that only women can make things grow. Water, like fire, was anciently sacred, especially related to the Moon Mother. Rainmaking and magic control of the weather were secret rites performed by naked women, not to be seen by the men. Witches have the same custom still, and it was traditionally said of them that the tender girls of 8 to 10 years can raise up rain and tempest. In recent studies of psychic phenomena made in Russia, it was found that dowsing rods work twice as accurately in the hands of women than those of men. More dramatically, the dowsing rod always responds to the polarity of women's bodies, no matter from what direction the body is approached. And this is not the case with men's bodies. Since the tides are regulated by the moon's mother cycle, she was believed to give all moisture, from the morning dew, natural springs, and rain to the great rivers and oceans. The moon queen was the tribe's rainmaker. The moon controls the fluids of the human body and the brain, as the moistest part of all, was particularly subject to its influences. Words like lunacy and moon madness are negative traces of this belief. In the changeless stability. Following wild game and gathering wild plants, Paleolithic people lived in dream time. Perhaps movement in time was not intellectually experienced as we do until reaping of wild grain was replaced by punctual observance of seed time and harvest time, the development of a calendric time sense. Seasonal inundation of land helped mark these planting and harvesting periods. Shepherds learned to reckon the periods of river height increase by watching the moon's phases across the higher pathways of the stars. Out of primordial dream time emerged this new and revolutionary conception of seasonal advance and regression, the complex interplay of opposing forces and their regularity. Until recently, duration of time was reckoned by nights rather than days. This can still be seen in time words like fortnight, honeymoon, month, moon. Originally, the month was a triplicity, like the moon cycle, waxing, full, and waning. The month was divided into 3 periods of 10 days each, and this division is seen in the astrological division of a zodiacal month in 3 decans. The first of each month fell on the night when the lunar crescent appeared. The crescent of the waxing moon came to symbolize increasing power and was later adopted as the emblem of Islam. For this reason, pre-Islamic Arabic people were all moon worshippers. Even the summer and winter solstices were calculated by the moon. The zodiacal constellations were called the houses of the moon, and the zodiacal belt was named the girdle of Ishtar. This Neolithic time calculation was quite different from that of the Paleolithic cave peoples, who reckoned cycles by breeding seasons of animals. In agricultural Neolithic, people developed a new consciousness of their own being in relation to the universe. This new consciousness is much closer to what we call modern. The understanding of numerical relations made it possible to make brick units from sun-dried mud, units of definite size and shape. The many industries developed by women, the willed transformation of matter brought about by women's discoveries and experiments with fire and water, led undoubtedly to increased activity of the logical mind. Just the notion of movement returning on itself, the building up of shape around emptiness, as in the making of a pot, so different from the carving of wood, bone, and stone, was an amazing feat of abstract thinking. A conception of cyclic symmetry developed, which in the end led to the invention of the wheel. There was a striking geometric tendency in Neolithic design, as in the repeated patterns of woven cloths and the repeated signs and symbols of pottery. This abstract and repetitive patterning was very different from the naturalistic animal and human forms of the old age cave cultures, and it had dangers. With the development of the pottery wheel, as has been said in many cultures, men took over ceramics and entirely began the mass production of items that had once been very lovingly handcrafted for local use. What kept this Neolithic intellectual development still within the matriarchal context, was that all magic symbols, the lunar calendar, the daily industries, occurred within a ritual, religious framework belonging to the goddess and the human collective. Techniques and signs were not to be manipulated for personal profit or exploited for personal power until the full establishment of patriarchy in the Bronze Age or late Neolithic.